Hello, I'm Matthew Kay from Beyond the Brick, and I'm sitting here with David Pagano. And David, you've just you're getting ready to release a book, aren't you?
Well, we're getting ready to announce a book release. It's the Lego animation book from No Starch Press, and it's going to be coming out later this year.
Okay. And so, what kind of inspired you to write this book? This is obviously like new territory for you, somewhat.
Well, animation is old hat, but
Old hat.
The book version of it is new. So I teach animation classes at Brick World and other Lego events, and oftentimes I will teach them with my co-author of the book, David Pickett of Nightly News at 9, and we'll be talking to parents afterwards, and they ask us things like, oh, what camera should I get for my child? What computer software should I use? All that sorts of thing, and there would be a lot of instances where people would look at, like, I have DVDs of my films, Dave has DVDs of his films. They would look at those things and say, oh, is that how to do animation? And we'd just be like, no,
It's not quite.
it's just our films. And then eventually so many people asked us that question that we were like, we should just make a thing that is how to do animation, so that it was mostly to get people to stop asking us.
Sure.
No, but it was, we're both excited. We both get excited about animation, and we both really enjoy sharing that excitement with others, which is, I think, is a familiar feeling in the Lego fan community.
So you really you're bursting at the seams trying to get that enthusiasm.
Yeah. So we wanted to enable the next generation of brick filmers to sort of have a handy reference guide to all of the basics. So we walk through literally the first chapter after our sort of introduction nonsense is the basics, like what's like the bare minimum you need to make an animation. You need a camera, you need some sort of software or an app, or you don't even really. You could just use like a point and shoot camera and just take the pictures and stitch them together. And you need some Lego bricks or minifigures. And so we guide people through that very basic first exercise, and then from there it's like, okay, now you got your feet wet. What are some of the other things you can do? What can you do with a minifigure? What can you do with Lego bricks in terms of tying that in with the pre-existing principles of animation? One of the principles we talk about is squash and stretch. And if you think about Lego bricks, they're all pretty solid plastic pieces. So we talk about ways to get around that, and like how to get that sort of like cartoony bounce and other techniques for animation into a very rigid plastic form.
Very nice. And now, when you were in the process of sort of deciding what to include, what sort of a thought process did you approach that consideration with? Was there like, well, this is something that would best be maybe taken in online form or on the internet in some capacity? What do we want to do for our book or something like that?
Right. Honestly, the sort of structure of the book came right out of the classes that Dave and I had been teaching, because we've done the workshops at Brick World for a number of years. I've done them at other events. I taught a class of 12 high school students over Skype once, which was fun. But yeah, so just sort of out of the structure of the class, like all the things we go through, we just sort of made that into a very loose table of contents, and then going through that, it's like, okay, well, when we talk about preparing to make a film, because there's really two sides of it. One is Lego animation, and it is the Lego animation handbook, and animation is just bringing stuff to life through stop motion. That's the main technique of the book. And then filmmaking is a whole other side of that. So it's taking those animation techniques and using them to tell a neat story, and that's sort of the second major thing of the book. Where was I going with this? What did you ask me?
I believe I asked you something about.
Oh, how did you put together the structure of the book?
Yeah.
Yes.
And there was a brainstorming session in a deep, dark cave somewhere in the middle of Iowa, where you spent 2 weeks without sleep planning.
Oh, we spent many weeks without sleep.
Yeah.
To get people through learning, just getting their feet wet, and then taking them through animating, and then taking that to the next step of now take your animation skills and make a film out of it. That's sort of how we had structured our classes, and then it was just a natural outgrowth to take that into a book form. Of course, being able to stand up in front of people and say, this is a minifigure, look what you can do, is a lot easier than sitting there and trying to write, okay, how do I how do I explain the physics of gravity and arcs
Sure.
to a 10-plus-year-old audience through only words and still images?
And then describe the intersection, because you touched upon this already, but
Mhm.
the intersection of it, to do Lego animation, you first need to be a Lego builder, but there also is the whole animation thing.
Sure.
So I feel like maybe as a Lego builder might take that for granted, but from someone that doesn't come from a Lego building background, like, well, what is important to kind of instill early on so that you're kind of, if you don't have each of those skill sets, like one is not pre-existing?
Right, I get what you're saying.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, we actually had a lot of discussions where it was like, we knew who we wanted this book to be for in a demographic sense. We wanted it to be for kids to adults, novice to experienced, all ages, all genders, all races and creeds. But in terms of like who it's for in the hobby sense, it's definitely a animation book for Lego fans,
Yes.
and not a Lego book for animation fans. It is that also, but to a lesser extent. Exactly. So, lost my train of thought again.
But I'm right there with you on all of that. Like, I think, like it's easy, maybe the Lego thing is already there, the animation thing
Right.
needs to, get there.
Well, there's definitely points in the book where we say specifically, we're not going to tell you how to build a spaceship.
Exactly.
We're not going to tell you how to build a monster
Up to
truck.
you,
Right. It's not. We're not talking about like stair stepping or staggering or doing snot techniques or things like that.
That's another lovely no starch book, right?
There's actually a bit in the book. I don't know if it got cut or not, but it's like there are other books that you can buy that talk about these things way better than we do. Parentheses also available from No Starch Press.
That's awesome. That's awesome.
So yeah, and the humor and the tone of the book is also important to us in terms of making it feel like. It feels like a book that David Pickett and I should write,
Exactly.
but we also want to make it feel like David Pickett and I are writing it, like that we are.
You're real people talking to real people.
Correct.
You're
correct.
not a third party organization.
Correct.
Yeah.
And so the way the book is kind of structured in that sense is we wrote it from a very like royal we sort of perspective, and then there will be times like there's a lot of stuff that's sort of universal in terms of animation and filmmaking, but one of the points that we try to get across in the book is there's no one answer, like one size fits all thing that is going to work for everybody. It's more about finding what works for you.
Middle ground.
Yeah. If when we in the basics section we talk about what's the best camera to get. Well, if you're starting out, what camera do you already own? Like, don't spend any money right now.
You don't have to go buy a $6,000.
Correct.
Right?
Correct.
And now to kind of close us out here,
Yeah.
well, talk about the affordances of a book as a piece of media. Like, what are the advantages of a book versus a video instruction format?
Sure.
What are the advantages of a book versus a website, and so on and so on?
I just remembered the thing I was going to finish.
Go there
now.
first.
No, yeah. So very very broadly, we talk in the book about like, oh well, we do this and we do that, and this is what we recommend for brick filming. And then there will be sort of asides that we cut to where it's like a little minifigure of Dave or I who just kind of pops up and say, well, when I make films, I use this technique and that's what works for me. And then I'll be like, well, I have a counterpoint to that. I actually do this and it also works. So we try to get the idea of just that there are as many ways to build a Lego mock. There are an equally infinite amount of ways to make a film. Yeah. But then, so to your question, how does animation translate into a book? The short answer is with great difficulty, because it is a motion picture medium and books are static.
Yeah.
What our goal was to have something that people could have open on the desk next to them while they're making their first film.
That is the most brilliant argument for the beauty of a book. I think
Absolutely.
even in 21st century, 2016, having a book is just a wonderful thing. The physicality of it,
Absolutely,
the fact that it doesn't go away if its battery dies.
Right.
Yeah,
absolutely.
it is there.
Yeah. No, and having something that you can earmark or dog ear rather,
Exactly. It's all good.
I'm trying to keep the energy level up.
Just something that is there. It's not. It's evergreen. It's going to be there for a long time.
Even with the title, like No Starches, we kind of wanted to call it like the Brick Animation Handbook or something like that. No Starches, just like how about the Lego Animation book?
Yeah.
And like that says it all. Like
Yeah.
it literally, like from an SEO perspective, it's like, what's like a book I can find about, I don't know, like a Lego animation book?
There has to be a book about that.
It's gotta be a Lego animation book. Oh, there's one called the Lego animation book?
These two guys
Okay.
named David wrote it.
Yeah.
It's awesome.
Yeah, it is, you know, it was perhaps kismet or destiny that Dave and I are writing this book, because we are both David, Michael, last name begin with P, both wear glasses and do animation with Lego bricks and characters.
That's
so
awesome.
it was meant to be.
Definitely.
And yeah.
It sounds like a wonderful book, David. I look forward to holding it in my hands.
Oh, me too. I can't even tell you. Yeah.
Awesome.